abolish the South African Human Rights Commission, asked an ex-user. Following an interview by South African Human Rights Commission. Let's listen to this interview.
Operation Tutula, they will say lawlessness has reached crisis proportions, much like the Premier is saying, and therefore, if people have occupied buildings or have gone and erected informal dwellings unlawfully, why should there be court orders to try and remove them from an area which they occupied illegally in the first place?
Unfortunately, Xoli, we have laws in our country. Amongst others, we are talking about the PI Act, which is very deliberate in protecting those that unlawfully occupy premises. And it's got a time frame. They're looking at 6 months period. Now, that gives our municipalities, the government officials, and anyone else who owns the building to be able to act within that period. But once it goes over that period, now you will be forced to then adhere to what the law says. And the law says that those are unlawful occupiers and they must be dealt with in terms of the PI Act. So you cannot just remove them as you'd want to remove them. But unfortunately, you are now forced to follow the process of the law. From how we see it, Xoli, the lawlessness comes as a result of not having enough monitors of the very buildings. These are buildings that are either under public works or they are under our own municipalities. They are supposed to be safeguarded. They are not supposed to be left for anyone to take over them.
Yeah.
Once that happens, that is the result of what we are now dealing with.
So on the part of the unlawful occupation of buildings that are not in use, that is government's own ineptitude, that they leave these buildings unattended, and therefore people who are homeless, they need shelter. They will probably get in there if there is no one to prevent them from doing that. So let's move from that and talk about illegal shack dwellings. How is the Premier supposed to act within the law in that regard? These are illegally erected structures. What does he do?
Again, yes, these are areas that are within municipalities. In municipalities, you've got managers. You're supposed to have people that are safeguarding areas in their own municipalities who are able to report when there is an informal settlement that is being erected so that the municipality can act timelessly. But usually, what happens is our municipalities, they let these things to happen over a period of time, and unfortunately then encroaches onto the PI Act. Ultimately, we have got people that would have been staying in an area for more than 12 months. Unfortunately, when that happens, you will be forced to follow the process of the law. You cannot go against the law. But if our municipalities were ensuring that we've got people that are employed, which can even mitigate the issues around employment, in our country, who are monitoring these issues to safeguard these areas, to safeguard, any property that belongs to government, we would not be faced with this situation. Because the truth is that, actually, in other municipalities, they are not faced with the similar challenges. Why? Because they are ensuring that someone has got their ear on the ground to report on these possible informal settlements that might be erected.
Let's wind down on the conversation, Commissioner, and here's a scenario for you. So here are red ants, and I'm merely using those because that's who we've become familiar with, not to say that they probably will be the ones used here. I'm merely using this as an example. Here they are, evicting people, and the Premier says, well, I couldn't do anything about this because the Human Rights Commission is on my neck saying that I'm doing things illegally. This scenario I'm painting to you is that the Premier may be tempted to use this as a political tool against you, a Chapter 9 institution, what are you going to do when he decides to pit members of the public against you from saying, I'm trying to do the right thing in order to decrease criminality within this community, but here's a Human Rights Commission saying that I can't do this? What do you do?
The Human Rights Commission is very clear. Is not saying that lawlessness must prevail in the country. The Human Rights Commission is only saying that the Premier must not allow such situation to prevail and then act unlawfully. You cannot mete out an unlawful act with an unlawful act. Premier should have at all times be on guard with regard to his areas. He must have people on guard to make sure that properties are safeguarded. And that way he would not mete out an act that is unlawful. He would not find himself wanting. So what we are saying is Premier must just act, but he must just act within the prescripts of the law. That's all we are saying. We are not saying that he must allow lawlessness to continue, but he must continue to act, but he must be mindful of things that he says, for instance, talking about 2 o'clock, early hours of the morning, evicting people, and also he must act within the prescripts of the law, because municipalities, in terms of the PI Act, are supposed to provide alternative accommodation whenever they remove people. That is what the law says. The Human Rights Commission is looking at what the law says. We are not acting outside the prescripts of the law. We are saying let's all observe the rule of the law. Thank you so much, Tony.
Finally, Commissioner, in your statement, you've mentioned the Ministers of Human Settlements. I think that's quite obvious. And then the Minister of COGTA as well. What will their role be in these evictions?
Yes, so they are responsible, amongst others, really for issues around land and municipalities, and also SAHRC responsible for local government. It is our intention to have a conversation with them to say where there are already informal settlements, they need to look at them and see how best they can ensure that same are resolved, but within the prescripts of the law. That's what we want to have a conversation about, and we hope that they will accede to our request that we are going to make to them so that we can, talk about this around the table. And hopefully we can come back to you, Xoli, and say at least they've undertaken to come about with a plan that, will run for a certain period of time, and hopefully human rights would not be violated, which South African Human Rights Commission is about. It's about just that, to protect human rights and nothing else. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this is an exchange. I mean, the interview is so long, so I don't want to play the whole interview, but I'll give you some background about why this interview occurred. It was following the, complaint by the Premier of Gauteng, Lesufi, about illegal immigrants who are building these informal houses, who are hijacking empty buildings, state buildings, and erecting illegal structures in open land that belongs to either to the municipalities without any consent, that they're going to remove them. And they have realized these people are acting, it's a syndicate. These illegal people who are coming in South Africa, it's a syndicate. Like I said, TAC is not going to stop illegal syndicates having a technology. You need a proper border, you need monitoring, you also need to surveillance of a lot of intelligence of people around the country and outside the country that are bringing these people through the border. They call each other. In most cases, illegal immigration is the same. Those who have been able to do this before, they call the other people to do the same. And then they start creating informal business doing so. In this case, hijacking building. And then they get these people, when they come in, they pay them, the person who doesn't own the property. gets the people to pay them rent to a state-owned property or state-owned land. All of this stuff is due to failure to govern.
Over the weekend. And it's clear, the pattern is clear. Identify if that government is that land owned by government, go there, send fewer people. After 72 hours, because of not being evicted, call everyone that needs land to go and occupy that land. We are tired, this government now. We'll deal with that situation because it's quite clear that this syndicate thinks that they can collect money, invade land, and nothing happens to them. If we have to meet in court, we'll meet in court, but we are going to destroy those informal settlements. We can't, because immediately after that informal settlement is established, what do people need? They need water. They need a school. They need scholar transport to be taken to the nearest school. They will then come and say they need sewer. They need roads. And we don't have, so we have to move money from those that are obedient to satisfy those that are disobedient because they can close roads or they can go on a public platform and insult us. Those days are over. If there is an informal settlement that is not recognized, that is not registered, that we have not given it the go-ahead, as I'm saying now, we've resolved this government. Those informal settlements must be crushed. And we'll try to persuade the affected people to do it voluntarily and engage government. If they don't want to do voluntarily and engage government, we have no choice. But the sad part is that majority of this new informal settlement is people that are not documented in our country. That's the sad part. Who think that they can challenge this government on the basis that they can just invade land and then establish that informal settlement without authorization. And thereafter come and blame government that they don't have water. We're not going to allow that. We've been abused, it's enough. We're going to be firm. So when we hear stories from now on, and I said to the team, we are going to dismantle this informal settlement at 2 a.m. I said it to the team. I don't want anyone during the day at 2 a.m. because I think the patience of this government and the patience of our people in our country and the accommodative nature of us to ensure that we work within the human rights limitations is been abused and taken advantage of. And therefore, we are pulling what we are doing in this one in particular, all municipalities, all the law enforcement agencies, we're going to hit one informal settlement by time. All of us. Not going to Ekurhuleni alone. If you're going to Ekurhuleni, we are bringing Johannesburg municipality, we are bringing Tshwane municipality, Simbeni municipality, we are bringing all the law enforcement agencies. We go to that area at 2 a.m. Don't ask me why 2 a.m. At 2 a.m. and are going to deal with this informal settlement. We can't be taken back when we want to develop our programs. And we can't allow people that think that they can bypass processes because they think that they've got the organized syndicate to do all this one thing. So that's our commitment. They are going to work on it. The way we've taken the decision to work on around it.
It's governance issue. Like she said, municipality are responsible for this stuff. So next year you elect your mayor and your municipality. Ensure you elect a municipality or mayor like Dr. Nasipo Moyo, Action SA, next year in your local government, that they can actually make sure that these stuff don't occur, that people who are informally placing themselves in this empty land are able to be evicted legally using the court order. Because she is correct, you cannot evict people without a court order. You couldn't do that. That happened during the apartheid era South Africa. So you could not do that. Even if those people have been there illegally. There's a time frame. If they're more than 6 months, you're dealing with illegal settlement. You now entered into a PI Act, which now you need to go to court. You need to request, a hearing. And for municipality, unfortunately, they now need to think about providing housing for these people who are illegal settler. If they're citizens, they can be managed according to the law of the land. If they are not, they're illegal, then the Home Affairs needs to act, needs to work. This is why this whole thing is like this. It's because of the failure of the border and Home Affairs. That's why you got so many of them coming in without any documents and then actually straining the resources that are limited in South Africa. So, yeah, unfortunately, this one for you all Mzansi people, yeah, you cannot abolish the South African human right because it is from chapter 2 of in the Bill of Rights is chapter 2 of the 1996 Constitution. It's actually a cornerstone of a democracy. So the only way you can change this one, you cannot abolish it outright. Okay, you can change laws, making sure explicitly clear that certain rights are for around housing are actually reserved for citizens. If that you can change that, then you can be able to actually stop this illegal immigration into South Africa that actually threaten the livelihood of the citizen and safety of citizens. So, yeah, how do you actually change the constitution? Well, to amend the Bill of Rights, you need about 2/3 majority of National Assembly and support of at least 7 of the 9 provinces. All right, especially if it's the founding values of the Bill of Rights as a whole. Bill of Rights, it's a high bar. It's 75% majority in Parliament. You need an extremely high bar to change that clause of the Bill of Rights. Okay, that Bill of Rights needs to change. That Bill of Rights, the right to life, it's theirs will. That right to life, it now needs to be amended because you need to really have explicitly to make it clear that it's the right of a law-abiding citizens. Bill of Rights apply to the law-abiding citizens or law-abiding legal residents. All right. So that one, yeah, you need 75%. Like I said, 7 out of 9 provinces, and at the National Assembly, you need over 75% majority to vote for this amendment. ANC is not going to support it because they're the one that brought this nonsense that they can't even govern with it. They can't even put laws that make sense, that safeguard the resources. We're using even the same thing to enforce the very same laws. I mean, you have ANC Premier complaining to us as citizens. You had like the KZN Premier complaining to us about the issue of illegal immigrants, how they, strain the healthcare sector. And you had the other one also complaining about, the unsafely, the way they put this mikuku they built, the way they, would erect illegal structure anywhere. When you walk around the street, they're out there at the corner selling some banana or something. That's itself, stuff like that. That that stuff didn't happen before 1994. You wouldn't have that stuff like that even in the township. You wouldn't have a spaza shop next door. Spaza shop were in the main street. Never were in a commercial main street. That's where you would go and walk there. You would not have spaza shop next door. Somebody running the spaza shop next door. Never. It wasn't allowed. And people knew then. It's a known thing. But they came in and created these laws and loosened the laws that protected the citizen, protected the neighborhood. Now, the South African Human Rights Commission is a Chapter 9 institution under the Constitution. So though it protects everyone's rights, but yes, you're right. Of lately, I've observed how they play. Yeah, it seems like it rights now. It's for their right. They protect the rights of illegal immigrants. Okay, of lawlessness. That's the rights they protect of lately. The thing they seem to be engaging in that it's just looks like they are, but in practice, in principle, they're meant to protect everyone's right. But yes, people who are saying that they are protecting rights of illegal immigrants, they are correct to say so, because of how the South African Human Rights Commission has engaged in the past with the citizens, and the issues that concerns the citizens, they seem to not interested in that human rights violations of the government towards the citizen. They're not involved with that. So yes, they have actually gave an impression that they are for illegal immigration, but no. In under the South African Constitution, Chapter 9 institution, it meant to protect everyone's rights, okay, not just the citizens. That's what you need to know. Okay, Section 7, subsection 1 of the Constitution says that the Bill of Rights enshrines the right of all people in our country. That includes illegal immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, but also within limits. Those rights are within limits. But when you hear a lot of them talk, even the South African human rights, they talk as if there's no limits. They are within limits. So you need to know these rights are not absolute. They're not absolute. For example, healthcare, the rights to healthcare for illegal immigrants is limited to emergency care alone. Okay, but when you listen to all of them, they are speaking as if these rights are only for ongoing care. It's not, it's for emergency. All right. That is what these rights are not absolute and are within limits. So if someone is illegal in South Africa, healthcare access is for emergency only. Okay. And also there are limits around the freedom of movements. The freedom of movement or residency can be limited by immigration law. And immigration law limits that freedom of movements. You cannot have a freedom of movements if you're illegal in South Africa. That immigration law itself, it says very clearly that you don't have those rights. All right. So there's been really a tension between the citizens and migrants' rights, and I don't think even the actually our media are doing service in being able to actually articulate this. The government is not articulating these policies really clearly to the citizens, and the media is also failing to do so. There seem to be a confusion about this.
You've mentioned the ministers of human settlements. I think that's quite obvious. And then the minister of COCTA as well. What will their role be in these evictions?
Yes, so they are responsible, amongst others, really for issues around land and municipalities, and also SAHRC responsible for local government. It is our intention to have a conversation with them to say where there are already informal settlements, they need to look at them and see how best they can ensure that same are resolved, but within the prescripts of the law. That's what we want to have a conversation about, and we hope that they will accede to our request that we are going to make to them so that we can, talk about this around the table. And hopefully we can come back to you, Xoli, and say at least they've undertaken to come about with a plan that, will run for a certain period of time, and hopefully human rights would not be violated, which South African Human Rights Commission is about. It's about just that, to protect human rights and nothing else. Thank you so much.
So the section that really needs amendment is the Bill of Rights, Chapter 2 of the Constitution. That everyone, and we've put our submissions, and a lot of people have put a submission. So ANC is being mum about the submission. Everyone needs to go. I know Action SA doesn't want everyone. There's a lot of people who don't like this, everyone. So everyone must be amended. Okay, the amendment, the failure to amend that everyone is due to the ANC. All right, there's section 26, which it talks about the right to housing, those right to housing. And section 27, it talk about healthcare rights and food, water, and social security. And Section 28 of that chapter 2 talks about the right, children's rights. Okay, so that needs to change. They need to distinguish, like I said, citizens, legal residents from illegal persons, illegal immigrants. So the amendment, it could say, for example, Section 26 and Section 27 shall apply to citizens and lawful permanent residents. That's what you could have, those amendment. So non-citizens without legal status may claim only those rights necessary to protect life and dignity as prescribed by national legislation. Okay. So so what is that clause, this kind of clause would actually do if it really was hypothetically, if it was amended, it would keep protections, basic protections, like no torture, no degrading treatment, and you would keep those, like I said, emergency healthcare in place. But what it will do, it would also limit those socioeconomic rights like housing, welfare, full access to healthcare to only citizens, and then have that gradual entitlement as a person becomes citizens to actually have those rights. All right, even if they are legal residents, those rights would be limited. They would not have them unless they become naturalized citizens. So those are the stuff they need to do and amend this thing. So, like I said, a two-thirds majority, 267 out of 400 MPs in the National Assembly, and at least 6 provinces supporting it in the National Council of Province and COP. If it affects founding values like human dignity and equality, the bar is higher. We need about 7 provinces. Okay, 75% majority. This is very high bar designed to stop the rash changes. All right. So, and the parliament must hold these public hearings, and the civil societies, the lawyers, the union, the churches, all of these NGOs, the migrant groups would weigh in. The citizens can submit written objections or support. That needs to happen. All right. And then, even if passed, the Constitutional Court could still check if the amendment is valid, especially if it undermines the South Africans' core constitutional values, the human dignity, equality, and rights for everyone. So it would still need to be changing in a way that is actually would meet that bar. So if everyone goes, then you still have to come up with a legislation about how you're going to govern for non-citizens, what entitlement is there for. So any amendment will still need to have to survive that public scrutiny, court review, and all those obligations, international obligations. So no, you cannot abolish South African human rights. Okay. So they're entrenched in the Constitution, Chapter 2 of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And you also have to meet a high threshold to change that, 75% majority to change it, okay? And the international obligations, that one, don't worry about it, because as far as I look at those international human rights, international human rights doesn't exist. As we've seen things that are happening in Gaza, that one doesn't exist. This country cannot claim any authority of human rights, having power over humanity with what's been going on in Gaza. That's my personal opinion. It's non-existent. International human rights, it's non-existence. That's the opinion that I've formed. It's something that we all would like to continue, but you can't have that. What we have, people, atrocities and images that we're seeing that comes out of that part of the world. So yeah, it gets you to think it actually has changed my views when I look at these things about human rights and stuff. I find them to be so selective in a way that they've lost the the power that I thought they had before. So this is personal opinion, and after you know exposed to this kind of trauma, vicarious trauma, when you're watching a certain group of people being abolished, being killed, being bombed, why it actually changes. You get affected somehow. So yes, for all you South Africans, the human rights cannot be abolished. They are permanently entrenched in the constitutions. But the amendment of how these rights can be applied and uh, can be applied to different group of people, require legislations, and they can change it as the government can change it. So yes, what the government can pass laws that restrict freedom of movement. Like we know that we have those laws already. We know that we have right now healthcare. It's only for legal residents, not for ongoing healthcare is for legal residents, not for illegal immigrants. Okay, so those things still exist now, but they're not being communicated well within the policy framework. So the laws are there, but the policies don't match the laws. All right. So you can't have say, okay, illegal people are not getting this, but then you don't have biometrics to check who's illegal, who's not illegal. You're not linking them to Home Affairs, to check the status of the person to be able to apply these limitations in accessing healthcare. This has always been an issue, and that's why it's staying in the clinic, because you need to have that. If you're saying that it's only for emergency healthcare, then how would someone in healthcare setting be able to determine that without identity, without a unique patient identifier that's linked to Home Affairs that determines that this person is not known, so therefore you need to only see them for emergency, and it's really stipulate what those emergency is, because emergency can vary depending on the person, but it really has to be spell out whether what's it considered as emergency. All right, which conditions, which are not the conditions. It's gotta be there. It's a policy. Policy is policy. Because we know this stuff and the resources are really limited. So you need to safeguard them for the citizens. The reason why these countries don't spend money on their healthcare, they've been budgeting using the South African budget, sending their citizens into South Africa to access these services for free, without them actually sitting down and formulating a budget for their citizens. It is the responsibility of every government to do so and have a budget for their citizens. It's not for South African government to budget for citizens from neighboring countries. Okay, so that's very clear there. So and also the stuff about housing, also the same thing. It's about what is reasonable, justifiable, and proportionately limitations. And that is fair because there's no country that offers that. And it's only fair to say you can restrict those access to citizen only and to legal residents, some of them, and the gradual, access if they become, naturalized and become citizens. So it's the same law that would apply here in Australia that we all subject to when we first came to Australia. Is that you gradually, you're a migrant, you pay everything, and then become permanent resident, and then you get certain access, then you become citizen, and that's you got full access to certain things. That should be like that because the resources are limited. You don't want people who are coming the country lining up for a government handout. If people are coming to the country and lining up for government handout, that's why unemployment is so high, because you're not recruiting people who are skilled enough to build new industry to employ citizens. All right. Even if you go to their shops, they are all illegals. They employ their own illegal. It's actually a syndicate. So you need to dismantle the syndicates, but you need to do it legally. As she said, it must be done legally, of course. Follow the law, and and do it. So, and ensuring that those councils are working. All of this mess happens in the ANC Council and the DA Council. When you look at also the Cape Town is the same mess. Tshwane was like this before Dr. Nasipo Moyo took over. So you see the same pattern of these metros that are not run really well by the party, the biggest two party, which is the ANC and the DA. So my advice for you is to, if you live in the township, operational Dudula or Action SA or PA, choose one of those for yourself. But I'll prefer if you choose Action SA and then operational Dudula for your someone to represent you. PA, I'm a little bit iffy about it. I know there's some fantastic young people for PA that are doing really well, but the leadership, nah. Let's leave it here. Lipantiti, let's leave it here for now. I'm not going to talk about Lipantiti for now. But the young people, PA, the people on the ground, they're fantastic. So if you like them and they are in your neighborhood, you're voting for them anyway. So you're not voting for the leadership at the top, you're voting for those people who are going to be your council, your mayor, So it really doesn't matter. It's about the person you're voting for and the political party and what they have, their policy. What's the policy like for you as a citizen? Thank you guys for listening. Thank you. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. Until next time.